はい。それでは、芸術総合講座5を始めたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。
お願
本
いします。
日は、スロベニアのビリアルカンピシェクさんをお招きして、スロベニア、20世紀のスロベニア人についてお話をしていただきたいと思います。本日もコーディネーター、大成さんに来ていただいて、授業の進行等々を進めていただきたいと思います。本日もよろしくお願いします。
はい、よろしくお願いします。大成です。Thank you for coming, Vilja. We are happy to host you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
Right, I would like to explain a little bit about today. Today は、今日はですね、スロベニア国立現代歴史博物館のキュリエーターのビリアさんにお越しいただきました。スロベニアについて自体もね、もしかしたら皆さんあまり、知らない方も多いかもしれません。確かにちょっとね、それこそずっと続けているこのスラブ人文化のスラブからとつながりがある言葉のスロベニアですけれども、あ中央東欧の一つの国でして、もっと旧ユーゴスラビアのね、一つでもあった国でもあります。で、場所としてはね、イタリアの隣にある国で、本当にこう、内陸、チェコなんて言ったらね、僕がいるチェコなんて言ったら内陸の地なんですけれども、内陸的な山とか豊かな自然がね、ありながらも、イタリアとつながった海もあってね、すごくこう、山と海がある、本当に素晴らしいこうパラダイスの場所なんですけれども、過去にはもちろんね、さまざまな歴史があって、今回は20世紀のスロベニアについてなんですけれども、本当にその以前っていうのもかなり複雑で、また興味深い歴史があると思いますので、勉強してもらいたいのですが、今回は20世紀についてフォーカスしています。20世紀で特にこの博物館の特徴ということもあるんですけども、やはり第一次大戦から第二次大戦のこう話も多く出てきます。僕個人の、心持ちというか感想なんですけども、こうやって戦争系のものの記念というか、残骸も含めて博物館に所蔵されているものを見ていた数年前と今のね、このちょっと世界中に戦争がよりリアルに起こってきた感覚では結構こうリアリティというかなんか心持ちも違うなと僕は今回思っています。ですので、歴史を勉強するっていうことだけではなくて、こう現代100年前のことが現代につながっていて、また同じことがある意味繰り返されている、でも違うこともある。そこら辺のこう複雑な気持ちというのもありますし、実際にこう僕たちの今これからに向かっていく何かのこう糧にしていけたらなと思っています。ちょっとね、心痛い部分ももしかしたらね、戦争のものなのであるかもしれません。ですけども、大切なことなので、こう皆さんもいい機会なので、勉強していけたらなと思っています。またちょっと最後なんですけど、今回、歴史博物館ということで、芸術、美術からは少し離れてしまいます。ですけれども、ここ数回で皆さんも中央東欧の芸術を学んでいる中で、やっぱりこの歴史とか、地政学的なこととかとは切り離せないっていう現状がね、ひしひしと感じていると思いますので、今回こういう形で、この歴史、20世紀の歴史にフォーカスするっていうことはとても重要だと思います。またちょっと最後なんですけど、現代アート、現代芸術を考えるにおいて、やはり20世紀の部分っていうものがすごく重要なポイントになってきます。20世紀は近い、100年前なのでね、近いことですし、やっぱ動きが早かったので、この動きの中で、100年のスパンの中を見て、今、これからの未来を紐解いていくというか、つなげていくっていうのがすごくヒントになっていくと思いますので、そこら辺からインスピレーションと皆さんの糧にできたらなと思っています。それでは行ってみましょう。Okay, thank you, Vilja. So I give you the mic. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Welcome all to our museum virtually, the National Museum of Contemporary History of Slovenia. It is a national institution. We're situated in Ljubljana, in the biggest park, Tivoli Park, in a small castle. So today I will guide you through our history, so Slovenian history of the 20th century. We are a very young and small country with a big history, as you will see. So in our museum, we tell stories and present objects from the turbulent 20th century. So we have now entered the year 1914, the year that marks the beginning of the Great War, a conflict involving so many countries that we know it today as the First World War. At this time, Slovenes did not yet live in an independent country as we know it today. So instead, they were part of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, ruled by Emperor Franz Joseph, who was already 84 years old and had been on the throne for 66 years at the time. So the Slovenes were far from statehood and divided into several provinces. Economically underdeveloped, but strategically very important, above all because of the port of Trieste. Literacy was high among Slovenes, many of whom studied in Vienna at that time. So the causes of the war were complex. Instability in the Balkans, competition for colonies, and the division of great powers into two opposing blocs. So on one side stood Austria-Hungary, Germany and Italy, and on the other side stood France, Russia, and Great Britain. But the immediate trigger, however, for the war was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. That happened on the 28th of June in 1914 in Sarajevo in Bosnia. So the assassin, Gavrilo Princip, was a member of the organization Young Bosnia, which fought for the unification of all South Slavs. At the time, he was only 19 years old, so legally he was still a minor and was therefore sentenced to 20 years of strict imprisonment instead of death. Here you can see the last moments before the assassination, so the departure from Sarajevo City Hall. You can see Franz Ferdinand and his wife entering their vehicle. So Austria-Hungary accused Serbia of the assassination and sent it an ultimatum, which Serbia did not fully accept. So this led to war. And 1 month later, on the 28th of July, 1914, Emperor Franz Joseph declared the beginning of the war. Newspapers such as Slovenec, as you can see, published special editions with the proclamation. So around 35,000 Slovenes were enlisted in the army. At first, there was a sense of enthusiasm. So people believed the war would be short and victorious, but alongside the bitterness of farewells, there was a feeling of justice, pride, and expectations of inevitable triumph. But soon, very soon, it became clear that this would be a long and devastating war, as it was. So Slovene regiments were sent to different fronts. In Galicia, in the east, soldiers quickly experienced the horrors of modern warfare, so machine guns, countless casualties, and positional warfare. You can see a few photos of the departure of soldiers from Ljubljana to Galicia. Here are the wounded soldiers on stretchers in front of the hospital train. And on 26th of April, 1915, Italy signed the Treaty of London, the London Pact. It was a secret agreement with Great Britain, France, and Russia. So this agreement brought Italy into the First World War on the Entente side, and it therefore had a crucial impact on the conflict. When Italy came in the war, a new front opened. It's called the Isonzo Front, or Soška Front, as we say in Slovenian. It was a front along the Socha River. Austro-Hungarian and Italian armies fought their 12 battles between May 15 and October 1917. It was a 93-kilometer long front, and it caused enormous human and material losses and devastated the entire landscape. Here you can see a part of the Isonzo front. Here is the Socha River, and it was a 93 kilometers long area. So the hinterland, life in the hinterland was also deeply affected. The parliament was dissolved, the economy was subordinated to military needs, and people faced shortages of food and raw materials. Here you can see a part of our exhibition that presents the hinterland of the First World War, with objects, some art, everything that stayed until nowadays. So with general mobilization, there was soon a lack of labor. So women, children, and prisoners of war and the elderly had to take over much of the work in agriculture and industry, including physical work, hard work, that used to be men's work. So women took over everything. And Slovene lands also received a lot of refugees at that time, especially when the Sonco front opened. So first people fled from the Eastern Front into the interior of the monarchy, and later almost 100,000 Slovenes were forced to leave their homes because of the Sonco front. Here you can see some of the refugees with their cattle and all of their belongings fleeing their homes
Excuse me,
next to the Socha River.
refugees from where?
From
Mainly?
Slovenia, from
refugees
Kobarid. Yes, so these
from
were
Slovenia to
the
where?
villages. Yeah, the villages next to the Socha River. So the front was pushing actually inside their homes, and they had to flee. They went into different camps, refugee camps, or they went to Ljubljana or other places to their relatives, and they lived there. When the war was over, actually, a lot of them couldn't return to their homes because it was all destroyed. So here is the view of the refugee camp, Steinklam. So here were a lot of Slovenes at that time. It's like nowadays we have a lot of refugee camps, so it looks kind of like that. Another thing, propaganda. Propaganda played an important role in the First World War. So postcards were especially significant as they were often the only connection between soldiers at the front and their families back home. Letters were censored and even pre-printed. Postcards with permitted reassuring messages were issued. So they actually received the pre-printed postcard, I'm good, all is well, we are healthy, and they weren't allowed to write anything bad about the war. At that time, a major food crisis started. It started already in the first year of the war, altering eating habits and sometimes turning into outright famine. So food rationing was introduced. People collected raw materials, and even nettles were gathered to produce fabric for military needs. So everyone was working for the war. They were collecting goods, materials, so they could make new weapons, uniforms, and everything. So life of the civilians was pretty harsh back then. But politically, despite the war, Slovene national awareness strengthened. In 1917, Anton Korošec read the May Declaration. As you can see here in the photo in Slovenian language, he read this May Declaration in Viennese parliament, demanding the reorganization of the monarchy and the independence of South Slavs. Among Slovenes, this sparked a large national movement. Women were actually collecting signatures. They collected over 200,000 signatures for this May Declaration. So this was a pretty important thing. But at the front, soldiers lived in extremely harsh conditions. So in trenches, as you can see here, and caverns, this is like a reconstruction or a replica of the cavern, the ones that they used in the First World War. It's in our museum, so people can see how it looked like. But this is like the ideal example of the cavern from that time. So soldiers faced extreme shortages of food and especially water, poor hygiene, lice and rats. So there were many diseases and constant shelling. So it was a pretty harsh environment. Helmets only became available after 1916. So new weapons, including poison gas, added to the horrors. So they had to make some like gas masks to prevent the poison. Yet the war also brought technological progress with developments such as a wireless radio. As you can see here, this is a telephone operator in the trenches, so on the Soška, in Soška front, Soška fronta. So some of the technological improvements also happened. Here I'm showing you two significant objects from our museum used in the First World War. So the first one is a shooting periscope by Fridolin Kaučić. He was a Slovene for the Mannlicher rifles. So this periscope enabled firing from behind cover or defensive walls and protected the soldier's head from injury. So before the helmets were used, this was a pretty important little object to be safe.
How do you have this machine on the head?
You have this periscope, so it's like this big. So when you have a rifle, you can put it here, and it has a little mirror inside. So when you're hidden behind a wall, and in this mirror you can see what's happening in the front. So it's the same when submarines use like periscopes to see above the water. So it's the same thing, but it's smaller and it's pretty convenient. But it only worked in good weather. So if there was rain or fog, it wasn't much of a use. So another object I'm showing you, it's an Austro-Hungarian canteen. Every soldier had one of those, and this was actually the amount of water they received per day. So when the war continued in the last years of war. So this was an extreme problem because the hygiene was very, very poor. They were thirsty. So water was a big problem, bigger than food. So after more than 4 years, the First World War ended and Austria-Hungary collapsed. So from this large multinational empire, many new states emerged. For the Slovenes, this marked the beginning of a new chapter, as you will see. So the 20s, on 29th of October 1918, the war was over, and in Ljubljana, a crowd welcomed the end of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy and the proclamation of the state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. However, despite international contacts, this new state was not recognized by the international community. So expectations regarding borders were not fulfilled. In Styria, here you can see the state of Slovene, Croats, and Serbs. And in Styria, this general, Rudolf Meister, mobilized Slovene soldiers and disarmed the German city guard of Maribor. So with skill and determination, he secured control over Maribor and ensured that the desired border on the Mura River was accepted by peace conferences. In Carinthia, dissatisfaction on both sides about the demarcation line led to military clashes. So the peace conference in Saint-Germain decided that the border would be determined by plebiscite. On 10th of October 1920, the Carinthian plebiscite took place. Most of the population voted for Austria, which meant that the Klagenfurt Basin was lost to Slovenia. So you can see like a propaganda list here. It says in Slovenia, I don't like for old failed Austria. I prefer young and rich Yugoslavia. So this was all over the place for Austria, against Austria. So people could decide what they wished for. So the border issue with Italy was resolved with the Treaty of Rapallo, signed on the 12th of November 1920. With it, Italy gained territories inhabited by more than 300,000 Slovenes, and Slovenia lost access to the sea. So this was a big loss for Slovenians, and the policy of nationalization and Italianization began. So Slovene language was banned in schools and public offices, cultural institutions were closed, and violence escalated. So it was a bad time for Slovenes to live under Italian regime. So because of these accumulated difficulties, the state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs quickly united with the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes on the 1st of December 1918. So in 1921, the Vidovdan Constitution was adopted, and it established centralism and unitarism, declaring that the kingdom consisted of three tribes of Yugoslav nation. So Slovene tribe, Croatian tribe, and Serbian tribe. Power was in the hands of the Karađorđević dynasty. So King Alexander was the king of these three tribes of one Yugoslav nation. So still in the early 20s also brought some important achievements alongside these political happenings. So one of them was the establishment of the University of Ljubljana in 1919, which still stands, and it's a very nice building, which encouraged the development of science and culture in Slovenia. So many Slovene intellectuals who had previously worked abroad returned home. So as I said before, they studied in Vienna, and now they didn't have to go abroad to study. They worked here in Slovenia. So this was a really important achievement. But other than that, life in the 20s was marked by both political turbulence and economic recovery. So country experienced a period of prosperity. Trade fairs in Tivoli, in this park where our museum is situated. So these trade fairs showcased Slovenian industry. People strolled through promenades wearing their finest hats. The flourishing of sport became a symbol of modern life. So actually life went on. So everything was, flowering. But on the other side, parliamentary life was very fragile. Political conflicts and tensions grew stronger, especially between centralist policies and demands for more autonomy. This is King Alexander Đorđević, as you can see. And the state was actually renamed the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, and he divided it into 9 banovinas. So these banovinas were named after Yugoslav rivers, and Slovenes within the kingdom lived in the Drava banovina. Drava is one of our biggest rivers in Slovenia. So these decades ended really dramatically. On January the 6th, 1992, King Alexander Karađorđević dissolved the parliament after a violent shooting in Belgrade's assembly. So he banned national political parties, suspended the constitution, and renamed the state, so the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. And meanwhile, the global economic crisis of 1929 worsened. So it worsened social conditions, deepened political tensions, and sharpened interethnic conflicts in the kingdom. These are banovinas, as I said. So here is Slovenia. It's shaped like a chicken, and here is Ljubljana, the capital. And this was the Dravska banovina. So Drava is this river in Slovenia. And you can see all of these 9 banovinas that actually created this Kingdom of Yugoslavia. So we entered the 30s in a really dramatical state politically. So the interwar years, so between the 30s and the beginning of the Second World War, were a time of contrast. So on the one hand, there was an economic growth and cultural flourishing, while on the other, political instability and tensions grew a lot. So during this period, Slovenian industry expanded significantly, and the 30s became known for progress in art, culture, and architecture. In 1933, Slovenia gained its first skyscraper, and it still stands, but it's not so high anymore because a lot of buildings are higher than this skyscraper. But for many years in that time, in 1933, it was considered the tallest building in the Balkans. So in the 30s, as I said, culture-wise, Slovenians began to enjoy new forms of modern culture. 1933 was the first Slovene feature film in the Kingdom of Zlatorog. It was released in the 1931, and the actress Itarina achieved European fame. So she was a Slovenian. Ida Kravanja was her Slovenian name. Itarima was her artist name. And she was also known, she was invited to Hollywood. Our architecture, Jože Plečnik worked at that time a lot. We got our biggest and the most beautiful cemetery, Žale. So yeah, art, architecture was really, good at that time.
Yeah.
So, however, politically, the situation was really, really tense. So the economic crisis of 1929 had severe consequences in Slovenia. Social conditions worsened, unemployment grew, and political divisions sharpened. So the decade brought further turmoil. So on 9th of October 1933, King Alexander was assassinated in Marseille. After his death, his cousin, Prince Paul, became regent. As the king's son, Peter, he was still a minor. So under his regency, Yugoslavia tried to balance between different great powers, but gradually moved closer to Germany and Italy. And finally, in March 1941, Yugoslavia joined the Tripartite Pact, aligning itself with the Axis powers. So this step, however, provoked massive resistance and demonstrations in Yugoslavia, especially in Belgrade. And only days later, events would lead directly into the Second World War, which is like a second part of our exhibition, as you can see here. And it's showing a chronological overview of events during the Second World War. So on the 6th of April, 1941, German forces attacked the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. The Yugoslav army was poorly armed, demoralized, and stood no chance against an enemy that was 6 times stronger. So within just 11 days, the country capitulated. And as you can see here, the Slovenian territory was divided among occupiers. So Germans, Italians, and Hungarians, and a really small area over here was occupied by the independent state of Croatia. These occupiers imposed different regimes, all aiming at assimilation and destruction of Slovene national identity. In German occupied areas, which was this one, Slovene was banned in public life. Thousands of people were deported. Children were subjected to forced Germanization. In the Italian zone, here and Ljubljana, so in this Italian zone, bilingualism was introduced, but cultural suppression and arrests were widespread. So every occupier took different turns, but actually with the same meaning. So this occupation brought great terror. Around 80,000 Slovenes were imprisoned, 58,000 deported to concentration camps, and more than 2,500 hostages were executed. So many were forcibly mobilized into foreign armies and sent to distant battlefields. So in response, Slovene resistance began early, actually a few weeks after Yugoslavia was occupied. So the Liberation Front was founded on the 26th of April, 1941, so very quickly after the start of the war. It united various groups that demanded armed resistance against the occupiers. So this became the foundation for the partisan movement and the vision of uniting all Slovenes. You can see some objects from Liberation Front here, like a uniform, their signs, documents, weapon, hidden radios. So we have a lot of objects in our museums. So the partisans actually started as a small guerrilla unit, but soon grew into a well-organized force, supported by workshops, hidden hospitals. One of them, Hospital Franja, still stands. There was a lot of hidden hospitals in Slovenia and in other Yugoslav countries, and they had a lot of cultural activity too. So their resistance also became part of the wider Yugoslav partisan movement. And life under occupation was really, really harsh. So in February 1942, Ljubljana was encircled with barbed wire. So people developed secret ways of smuggling letters, smuggling food and small items through hidden compartments in meal containers, handbags, bicycle rollers. So yeah, they knew their ways to smuggle important documents to important people. So despite these efforts, arrests, deportations, and shootings of hostages were constant. So like, yeah, really constant. And we are now entering one of the darkest chapters of the war, of the Second World War. So this was the system of concentration camps. Slovenes were among those deported to camps such as Dachau, Auschwitz, Mauthausen, including sub-camp of Mauthausen, Ljubelj. Ljubelj South Camp is actually situated in Slovenia. It's near the border with Austria. So it was a small labor camp, and inmates actually built a tunnel that is still in use to cross the border with Austria to go to the other side. So this was the concentration camp, as you can see, and on the other side of the road, this was a civil camp. So civil workers were here. They were not imprisoned, but they actually worked under forced labor. So it was a small camp among the mountains, and the biggest population inside were the French. So French, Polish inmates, and then Yugoslavs, and the most of it Slovenes. So inmates of all of these camps were subjected to inhumane conditions, hunger, forced labor, and mass executions, as you know. So the Holocaust also claimed many victims in Slovenia. Alongside Jews, the Nazis persecuted Roma, political opponents, the disabled, and others deemed undesirable. So these atrocities remind us that such horrors must never be repeated. And that's actually the message that we want to address in our museum too. But aside from that, the war also brought civil conflict among Slovenes. So different political camps had conflicting strategies. While the Liberation Front advocated armed struggle, others waited for the Allies. So this led to collaboration and internecine violence. The Slovene Home Guard, organized in 1943, fought alongside German forces. By the spring of 1945, German units and their collaborators retreated across Slovene territory. So military operations continued in Carinthia even after the official German capitulation, so on 8th of May 1945. But shortly after, on 29th of November 1945, the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia was proclaimed. So the Second World War has ended, but Slovenia now entered a new period, one of rebuilding, socialism, and new statehood with Yugoslavia. So we call this room, this part of our exhibition, the post-war period, so from 1945 to 1961. And the end of the Second World War brought devastation. So cities, villages, and infrastructure lay in ruins, and there was an urgent need for reconstruction. Shortages of food, housing and resources were severe, and the country had to rebuild almost from nothing. So after the war, Yugoslavia leaned heavily on the Soviet Union, both politically and economically. And the new leader of the country was Marshal Josip Broz Tito. You can see his statue here in the photo. And his authority extended across the political, military, and symbolic spheres of power. So one of the first measures of the new communist government was agrarian reform. Oh, here's some photo from the first post-war elections in the 45. You can see two boxes here. So the majority of people voted for Josip Broz Tito. Okay, this is the agrarian reform. So this photo shows land distribution in Laurica in 47. So large estates owned by banks, companies, the church, and wealthier peasants were confiscated and redistributed to small farmers who had little or no land. So this was this reform. This is what it meant. So at the same time, nationalization of industry, trade, and private businesses took place. So this was part of the introduction of a planned economy following the Soviet model. The country embarked on the ambitious 5-year plans, prioritizing heavy industry, electrification, and infrastructure. So voluntary youth labor brigades, as you can see on the photo. In practice, both voluntary and forced played a key role in building railways, factories, and entire new towns. So two of the most notable post-war cities were Nova Gorica and Velenje, as you can see here. So despite the focus on rebuilding, the early post-war years were also remarked by harsh political repressions. This is another place in our museum where we represent post-war killings in Slovenia. So there was a brutal reckoning with collaborators and opponents of the partisan movement. So thousands were executed or imprisoned without trial. We call that the dark side of the moon, this part of the room. But on the international stage, Yugoslavia initially followed the Soviet Union, as I said. But in 1948, a major conflict erupted between Tito and Stalin, so known as the Inform-Bureau dispute. Stalin wanted to subordinate Yugoslavia to Moscow's control, but Tito refused. So Yugoslavia was expelled from the Cominform, and the country set out on its own path of socialism, which soon developed into the unique system of self-management. This famously expressed in the slogan, "Factories to the workers." But at the same time, international politics strongly influenced Yugoslavia. The western border with Italy remained unresolved until the mid-1950s. So the 1947 peace treaty created the Free Territory of Trieste, which was divided into two zones. So in 1945, with the London Memorandum, Zone B was given to Yugoslavia, restoring Slovenia's access to the sea. So this was actually going on from way back from the First World War, and actually here the border was resolved. At that time, new hospitals, schools, and cultural institutions were built, while voluntary labor and socialist slogans emphasized unity, reconstruction, and progress. And then we entered the 60s and the 70s in Slovenia. So the 60s and the 70s were a time of economic development, social change, and growing prosperity in Slovenia within socialist Yugoslavia. With the success of industrialization and the introduction of self-management, life standards improved. Factories no longer focused only on heavy industry, but began producing consumer goods. So as you can see, washing machines, refrigerators, stoves, radios, later televisions. So this transformed everyday life and gave families more comfort and free time. Before that, they worked every day of the week. Now they had a Sunday off, so they could travel, they could they took trips in Slovenia and Yugoslavia. So new residential neighborhoods were built, especially large housing blocks made affordable with state loans. And the car became the primary means of transportation, enabling families to enjoy weekend tourism, as you can see, summer holidays, usually on the Adriatic coast. They went skiing. So yeah, tourism was really high. So television also became a central part of life alongside the news. People enjoyed entertainment shows, music festivals, Eurovision, sports, especially sports. In 1972, Planica hosted, this is our biggest ski jump, hosted the first World Ski Flying Championship, which attracted worldwide attention, and it still does. So this was actually also a golden age of Slovene film. One of the most famous productions was Good Luck Kekac in 1963, the first Slovene color feature film, which even found audiences abroad, including China. So posters and film screenings drew many visitors to the cinemas. Cultural and architectural development also left a strong mark, as you can see. Major buildings such as the Tivoli Hall. This is where our museum is, next to the Tivoli Hall, which still stands. It hosts a lot of sports events still till now. So it was built in 65. So Ljubljana's clinical center was built in 75. The highway network was starting to build in 72, as you can see here. So Cankarjev Dom, this is like our biggest cultural and congress center, was built at that time, as you can see. So everything actually symbolized modernization in Slovenia. But economically, Yugoslavia was different from other socialist countries. So after the break with Stalin, its borders were more open. People could travel abroad more easily, especially to Italy and Austria. Slovenians were actually buying goods in Italy, and they had to smuggle a lot of jeans and coffee back to Slovenia. And politically, Yugoslavia remained under the strong leadership of Josip Broz Tito, who ruled until his death. He died in 1980. It was the biggest event in the 80s. So his image, ideology, and charisma shaped everyday life. But beneath the surface, economic problems and social tensions were slowly building, even before his death, so before the 1980s. So we call the 80s like a decade of intense change. This decade, so these were years of awakening demands and rapid change in Slovenia. So it all began symbolically with the death of Josip Broz Tito. So in 1980, he ruled Yugoslavia for decades. His passing marked the end of an era. So the special edition of the newspaper Delo, as you can see here, dedicated to his death, reflected the deep uncertainty that followed. Here it says, our Tito died. So this was the whole newspaper dedicated to him and his death. He died in Slovenia. Without Tito's unifying authority, Yugoslavia entered a period of crisis, which, as I said, happened before. So disagreement with the system became more and more visible. The loudest voices of protest came from the youth. So through music, graffiti, theater, art, different newspapers, they all expressed their disagreement. So civil society movements flourished. Peace, ecological, feminist, philosophical, and human rights groups all began to question the one-party state, and they demanded change. So that's why on the 8th of May 1989, our poet Tone Pauček read the May Declaration. So the first one, the first May Declaration was during the First World War. This was the second one in 1989. He read it in Ljubljana's Congress Square. It called for full sovereignty of the Slovene nation and was signed by more than 100,000 people. So in 1989, most of the future Slovene political parties were established. Later that year, several of them joined together in the Demos coalition, the democratic opposition of Slovenia. And these developments coincided with dramatic international events. So the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 symbolized the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. And all over the continent, countries were transitioning to democracy, and Slovenia was part of this wave of change. So the decade ended with a decisive step. On the 23rd of December 1990, Slovenians voted overwhelmingly in favor of independence in a referendum. So more than 88% of all voters supported living in an independent Slovenia. The 1980s, with all their tensions and changes, thus paved the way for a new chapter in Slovene history. So this is independence. So on the 25th of June 1991, the Slovenian parliament adopted the independence documents. And the next day, on the 26th of June, as you can see here, the independence ceremony took place in front of the parliament in Ljubljana. Thousands gathered on Republic Square to witness the raising of the new Slovenian flag and the proclamation of the Republic of Slovenia. But however, independence was immediately put to the test. So in the early morning, so the next day of 27th of June, 1991, the Yugoslav People's Army, YPA, launched an attack to prevent Slovenia from leaving Yugoslavia. So tanks advanced from their barracks towards the borders, airports, and strategic points, including Ljubljana's airport Brnik, which was bombed. So the Slovene territorial defense and the police, supported by civilians and civil protection, resisted. So makeshift roadblocks appeared across the country, and the 10-day war followed. So it lasted till 7th of July, 1991. So despite the imbalance of power, Slovenes defended their borders successfully. And then this was the time that the negotiations mediated by the European community took place on the Brijuni Island in Croatia. So the Brijuni Declaration brought a ceasefire. You can see our first president here and some of the other politicians. Slovenia temporarily froze its independence process for 3 months till October, but the Yugoslav army began withdrawing. So by October 1991, the last YPA soldiers had left Slovenia. And step by step, Slovenia gained international recognition. So on the 15th of January, here is our last room of the exhibition, so the Republic of Slovenia. We only presented until 2008, so we have a lot of space and a lot of topics to discuss after that. But yeah, on January 1992, the member states of the European Community recognized Slovenia, and in May of the same year, Slovenia became a member of the United Nations. So the 1990s and 2000s were decades of building a new country. Slovenia had to establish its own institutions, laws, and economy. The transition from a socialist planned economy to a market economy was not easy. So privatization, unemployment, and inflation created challenges, but Slovenia managed the transition more successfully than many other post-socialist states. Then a major milestone came in 2004 when Slovenia joined both NATO and the European Union. So this was followed by the introduction of the euro in 2007, making Slovenia the first of the new EU member states to adopt the common currency. Before we had our own currency, tolar, And then in 2007, we changed to euro. So Slovenia also took on international responsibilities. In the first half of 2008, the country held the presidency of the Council of the European Union, the first of the new member states to do so. This achievement symbolized Slovenia's successful transformation into a stable, democratic, and respected European country. So by 2008, less than 2 decades after declaring independence, Slovenia had firmly established itself as a modern, democratic, and internationally integrated state. So here is where we end our exhibition. So in 2008, with 3 presidents until then, and then we had 2 more. We have now a first female president in Slovenia. So we still have a lot of place to discuss all of the events. But I hope I presented like a small part of the world, like Slovenian turbulent history of the 20th century.
Thank you so much, Vilja. I'm happy to have such intense and important photos and the fact of the archives and so on. I thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you
Well,
so much. Yeah, our museum has a large photo collection, the biggest one in Slovenia. So we have a lot of photographic material and documents, and it's really, yeah, interesting to discover different periods of Slovenian history through photos.
I'd like to ask you a few questions that I didn't catch much. For example, the World War II time. There was so many scenes about the concentrate camp, and as I know, it's always for the Jewish people. But is it about for the Jewish people or not for the Slovenians? Or this
Do you
concentration?
do you think Ljubel concentration camp?
Yeah,
It wasn't.
in the wartime. Yeah.
Yeah, so this concentration camp wasn't meant to be like an extermination camp like Auschwitz was or Mauthausen. So Auschwitz was meant to exterminate the Jews, and Mauthausen. These was like the like camps of the third so the extermination camps. This was meant to be a labor camp, so people came there to work. So sub camps actually existed because they needed people to work on some things, like in different industry, or in this case, they worked on the tunnel. So they needed like so under forced labor, they actually worked, on the infrastructure. They built roads or different factories and so on. So this was actually meant to be like a labor camp, but actually there was a lot of victims in all of these camps because of famine, because of violence, extreme violence, because of injuries and so on. Their sicknesses weren't treated or so on. So it actually there was no Jews, or maybe like just a few Jews in Ljubel concentration camp, but all of the others, like everyone who disagreed with this Nazi ideology. So intellectuals, different people, yeah, including doctors, lawyers and teachers. So intellectuals actually they were afraid of them, so they could like stepped forward. Yeah, so this was like the only Nazi concentration camp in Slovenia. And there are still some remains, like some remains of the blocks of the barracks, and you can still see it as a memorial place.
Thank you. Next one. As I live in Czech, people often talk about the dark side about the socialistic time. But as you said, the golden age for the Yugo time under the Tito, it seems like Tito seems really like charismatic, the guy. And the question from my side is that are there still some people talking about the Tito and still missing this time that is like kind of better than now, or it's a nonsense question?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. We still call it Yugo nostalgia. So people are a lot of times they're saying, "Oh, good times like
Mm,
the 70s. It was a
mm,
great time for people. They
mm,
got um apartment, so it was really cheap. They got loans, so everything changed for the good. They started to travel. So they actually, a lot of people actually romanticize this
mm.
period of time, still now,
Which is
include
over 40, 50 years people,
yeah.
no young people,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Mm.
including younger generations
Really? Okay.
that kind of inhabited this kind of this point of view from their parents.
Mm,
So yeah, a lot of times we actually present both sides, so the dark side and the light side of
mm,
living under socialistic regime. But yeah,
mm,
people still look back as the good times. So yes,
mm.
it's a lot of nostalgia in Slovenia.
Is it including the Yugoslavia was bigger than this divided countries, the six countries, but and yeah, I mean the people think to miss as it's the united. People gonna get back
Um, like all of
countries,
the previous
six
Yugoslav
countries. Yeah,
countries.
yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah, yeah. We
Mm,
do think like we remember that we were once like a part of a big country, that we were
mm,
once united. We actually understand a lot of our languages, so yeah, we still feel a lot of connections to
mm. Does it
these
does
six
it
countries.
connect with the nowadays, so many politics coming to the far right side and also, coming back to kind of socialistic the essence in their way. And does it connect with what's coming now and the near future and this
In
time from the Yugo time?
in Slovenia.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we don't know. Actually, I think so. We have elections in the next year, so we'll see. It's
Mm-hmm.
always kind of um, we're so small and we have a special yeah
Mm,
politics here. So yeah,
okay.
it's really specific for Slovenia.
Mm,
So politics who actually were present in when the independence happened are still working, are still in politics.
mm.
So yeah, it's really specific for Slovenia.
Not only politics, but the war itself. Nowadays, more war is coming up. Yeah, like some
Hmm.
people will even talk about the World War III and so on. And your museum collects so many objects and archives from the wartime, from World War
Hmm.
One to socialistic time on, so that I don't know. I feel I can remind somehow from the 100 years ago and to the now that somehow it connects and feels somehow strange. And
Yeah.
how do you feel when you are working there all the time there
It,
and you see the
yeah.
object of the world stuff? Mm,
It's really difficult because when you read the testimonies or diaries from the First World War and the Second World War,
yeah.
um, you see that people are always saying we have to talk about these events or this violence or whatever
Yeah,
happened so we don't repeat it or we
yeah,
don't forget it. But living in this time, you see that all of it is happening again, and it's you feel like we haven't learned anything from these
mm,
100 years
mm,
of history.
true,
So
true.
yeah, it's we try to encourage students and young adults to um, actually to think critically, to develop some kind of critical thinking to see what's going on. So we have a lot of educational programs on active citizen and so on. So yeah, we try our best, but
Mm,
sometimes it feels like yeah, history
yeah.
hasn't
Mm,
learned, hasn't taught us anything. So yeah.
yeah. kind of sad, yeah, to see
Yeah,
the things again. Mm.
I agree completely.
Yeah. Okay, final question. I see the collections now t up to the 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what you are collecting after the 2008. What do you have, or what would you collect from 2008 to up to
Mm,
now?
yeah, we are collecting some so stories
Mm,
from people living in independent Slovenia. So yeah, we are still collecting photographs, yeah, audio testimonies
mm,
and so on.
mm,
So we are working on that
mm,
because it's interesting to. So for people after us in, I don't know, 50 years, it
mm,
would be really interesting to see the change. So from
mm.
the beginning of this young country until then.
For
Um,
example, what would represent last 15 years, like mobile PC, for example, or, or I don't know, internet,
yeah,
what,
probably everything. Yeah, technology, tourism.
tourism, yeah,
So it really grew over the years. So Slovenia
mm,
became internationally known because it's so small and you have mountains and seaside and lakes and rivers and it's really
mm.
nice. So yeah, this really grew. So this is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Slovenia is really beautiful. I went once and it's super beautiful
Oh,
country.
really?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
did you go? To Ljubljana?
Ljubljana and Ribnica I went.
Ah, Ribnica.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a good choice.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was a really nice time there. Nice mountains. Also, Trieste for the beach side.
Yeah, Trieste is in Italy, but
Ah, no,
it was
sorry. Then next to the Trieste, the Slovenian, the beach side.
Koper, Piran, Portorož. Yeah.
This place.
Yeah, it's really nice. So you're welcome anytime
Mm,
in our
thank you.
museum
And
if you decide to come.
yeah, our students also would like to go for sure. Mm.
I'm sure.
By the way,
Yeah.
how many art university, like national or state art university?
Um, yeah,
Are do
I
you know
don't
some?
know exactly. I think there are four. So
Mm,
in Ljubljana, there's the biggest one. So there's
mm,
another one in Maribor, Koper, Nova Gorica. So
mm,
yeah, we have a few. And
mm.
they're kind of doing a great work. So yeah.
Very
Um, yeah.
good. Thank you.飯田先生、何か
あ、
あったら言いますけれども、大丈夫ですか？
はい。なんかすごく面白かったっていうのと、あと、日本は今すごく、アメリカの、なんか占領っていうか、傀儡の国になっているから、ある程度資本主義の中で平和だけど、なんか本当の意味ですごく独立していて、女性の大統領もいて、なんか、あの、ちゃんと、なんか未来を追ってるなっていう感じがしました。なんか、
from
そういう、なんかそういう秘訣っていうか、なんか、どういう国民性なんだろうっていうのをもうちょっと知りたかったなと、ちょっと思いました。
Mm.
うん。
From his side, it was really interesting, and Japan itself is let's say under the USA after World War II. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of semi-occupation for the last 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
But as he sees now, the Slovenian the lectures, it seems really independent and also the peaceful right now. And also you have the lady is the president now, right? Female president, or
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm,
he's curious about this, how it's developing well, and you see the near future. So he's interested in this the nationalities or
mm-hmm.
the characters of the people there.
I think it's developing quite nice under this president. But yeah, it's for 5 years and then we'll see how it goes. So people
Mm,
are still voting like a right-hand side here in
mm,
Slovenia. So
mm,
it's really, you never know, yeah.
mm,
But right now it's like a calm period.
mm, mm. It's really
Um,
calm, yeah. Alright, thank
う
you.
ん、
大丈夫ですか他には。
大丈夫です。
Alright, from my side, it's fine. I'm satisfied. Do you have something from your side, or you are okay with?
No, oh,
Mhm.
are you asking me or Yuta?
I'm asking you, Ilya.
Okay.
Mm,
No, thank you so much.
okay.
If you have anything else, anytime, just,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
the students gonna watch the videos and also write a comment or
Perfect.
Q questions. So I will send you everything translated in English. So if you have time, yeah, we happy if you answer for the questions
Yeah,
and
I will
yeah.
be really happy to. Yeah.
All
We'll
right.
stay in touch.
Thank you so much
Perfect. Thank you so
today.
much. Have a
All right.
nice evening. I
You
will
too.
I will write you on WhatsApp.
Yes,
I will
exactly. Okay.
okay, perfect.
Keep
Thank
in
you.
touch. Thank you very much.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Thank you
Bye
very
bye. Thank you for
much.
today. Bye bye.